Coming up next on the Jeff Crilley Show, the job of being a police officer has never been more challenging. We'll be talking to the head of one of the premier police institutes in the country next.
Many are predicting that the worst is yet to come, which is unfortunate, said one person here. Until now, they've enjoyed the reputation of being the nation's icebox.
Watched a burglar in his home this morning by webcam.
As a journalist of over 25 years, stories are what make my world turn.
Reporting live from the Dallas newsroom tonight, Jeff Crilley, Fox 4 News.
But in 2008, I took the jump from my familiar life and started a PR firm from my home.
We're talking about anyone with a camcorder like the one I'm using becomes a television network.
We started slowly growing the company, and we now have over 100 clients, and we've branched into the world of live digital broadcasting. I now own 8 different TV studios and have a huge team. And the stories that I now get to share are sometimes the most important of my life. Life has a funny way of coming around full circle. This is the Jeff Crilley Show.
Well, you've got a feel for those heroic men and women in blue out on the streets trying to make split-second decisions right now, and also having to worry about everybody with a cell phone and people second-guessing them on social media. To talk about that today, Gregory Smith, he heads up the Institute for Law Enforcement Administration. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jeff. Happy to be here.
Well, before we talk about policing, let's talk about the parent organization, because you guys have been around for a long, long time.
Yes, sir. The Institute, ILEA, we are a division of the Center for American and International Law, or known as CAIL. The center was founded in 1947 by Dr. Robert Story. And Dr. Robert Story was one of the lead prosecutors at the Nuremberg trials. He was handpicked by Chief Justice Robert Jackson. When he returned from prosecuting Nazi war criminals, he was so distraught over the lack of respect for human rights and the rule of law that he got a number of benefactors together, and they founded the Southwestern Legal Foundation for the sole purpose of promoting human rights and the rule of law across the globe. And we've been around since 1947. If you come into our building, there are 131 flags that are hanging that represent a nation that has sent someone to our organization for educational purposes. The Institute that I direct, the Institute for Law Enforcement Administration, we're just one division. We focus on law enforcement education. We were founded in 1957. The other organizations are Oil and Gas Law, or Energy Law Institute, Arbitration Law, Law and Technology, and Comparative Law. And they bring in lawyers and judges from across the globe.
Absolutely. And you have a background in policing yourself.
Yes, I was a police officer for probably a total of 10 years, but I'm not a hardcore LA cop. I was a university cop and a military policeman before I saw an advertisement for an ethics instructor at the Institute. It was on a 3-year grant from the Department of Justice. I applied for the job. They chose me, and they've been trying to get rid of me for 23 years now, and I'm still here, still there.
Well, you're a great guy, and we're going to get more into what's going on in the country here in a second, but we found a great overview video. Let's go ahead and roll that now.
Some of the words I might use to describe CAIL would be collaborative,
organized, cutting edge,
innovative,
commitment,
dedication, self-reflection,
world-class continuing legal education and law enforcement education.
CAIL was the vision of Dean Story. Dean Story, who had been at SMU and then gone to war in World War II, was involved in Nuremberg trials and came back from Nuremberg with the feeling that American lawyers really didn't know much about international law, and if we were going to keep a Nuremberg from happening again, we needed to promote education and justice and knowledge of lawyers from the United States and around the world.
Since 1947, CAIL has been about top-notch, world-class continuing legal education and fostering and developing professional legal networks.
Just in the institute with which I've been involved, we've had conferences, webinars, networking events, and even sponsored writing competitions.
CAIL offers a community. So whether it's with law enforcement or energy, you get a sense that people come back again and again because they build up these relationships.
CAIL is one of the most important institutions in our country in training law enforcement, in training oil and gas lawyers, in training arbitrators, and lawyers throughout the world. It's essential, it's innovative, and I'm very proud of my association with Kale. In a sense, Kale serves everyone because it affects every aspect of our society and in ways that may be intangible. The most immediate effect, of course, is on lawyers and law enforcement, but it's something that affects the lives of us all and makes the world a better place.
Kale's provided a way for me to make sure that the quality of the continuing legal education that's made available to the members of my organization is high, is relevant, and is important.
I believe it's the conscience of our society. We have to have a society that follows the rule of law. We also have to have professionals that are able to administer it properly, ethically, and within the law.
People have a lot of choices about how to invest their time, their money, but one sure investment and one that has a real impact on the world is investing in Kale.
By investing in Kale, you're really investing in your own community, in your own business, in your own personal development.
What makes Kale unique is the fact that it brings the criminal justice community of professionals together.
Wow, you guys do so much, and I suppose you're always kind of morphing to fit the needs of your members, right?
Yes, that's true. But also, Jeff, we have our core programming, and it's because of our core programming that our members, which is about 132 individual departments from across the country, constantly send their people to our organization for educational purposes.
And you're the guy that the media runs to for a quote. I just saw you on Channel 5 last week, and that caused me to invite you on my show. Let's talk about training and hiring practices. Is that something that you deal with at the Institute?
It comes up in conversation. We understand that the Institute for ILEA, I'll just say for short, we don't focus on training young officers. We train police supervisors, leaders, and instructors. And as part of the conversation when we're talking about police leadership and supervision is who do we hire? And so we bring in experts that actually teach principles of hiring, who we should be looking for, what we don't want to see in the future of policing, to these young police supervisors and leaders that are going to go back to their departments and implement those policies. That's how we impact that subject.
And I was just on your website. We're going to put this up on the screen. Boy, you have so many classes, just something for everybody. I see teaching diversity, the Texas Sergeant Academy. Let's talk about teaching diversity. What goes on in that class?
Probably, and under ILEA, there are three major divisions: supervision education, our technical assistance programs, and our Center for Law Enforcement Ethics. And under supervision is actually under our leadership programs. The teaching diversity falls under the Center for Law Enforcement Ethics. We, outside of the state of Texas, people know us as the ethics guys. Inside of Texas, they know us for leadership. The departments know us for leadership and supervision. Outside of Texas, ethics. We've developed an ethics program that has been taught in 9 different countries. To this day, we estimate that we have trained probably in the area of close to 10,000 ethics instructors that then go back to their organization and teach our ethical decision-making models. So when law enforcement officers go out on the street, they don't just randomly make decisions. They run their decisions through a process because, as you just mentioned, some of these things happen so fast that we want to inoculate them to a process so that when they see an ethical dilemma, they can project consequences and figure out and kind of mesh what the right thing is to do with the consequences of one's actions. To give you an example of what I mean there, and I'll circle back around the teaching diversity. When I first looked at the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd incident, I immediately saw it through an ethical prism. And the question that I immediately asked was, I saw an officer that was, in my opinion, out of control, who had crossed the line. And there were 2 things that registered with me. Either that is a very senior officer or a very ranking officer, because the other 4 officers did not challenge him. Well, in our ethics program, we have been teaching intervention for the last 25 years. And under our ethical decision-making model, one of those officers, if they had run it through some of our decision-making process, would have saw that the consequences of this action is not going to be good for them, themselves, the other officers around, the society, the department, and the government. And therefore, they then would have a duty to intervene and stop this action. And one of two things would have happened. We may have saved a life, and we also might have saved a career. Because with law enforcement officers, I'm not defending Derek Chauvin in this case, but any officer at any time on one particular day, something could click. And you need your buddies to be able to say to you, this isn't right. Let's pull it off. And the only thing that I saw preventing that was either this officer was very senior, and these younger officers could not challenge him based on, unfortunately, that's one element of police culture, and they didn't have the strength to do so. I imagine as they look back on this and they run back through their prism, many of them wish they had intervened. Now, coming back to teaching diversity. Teaching diversity is one of our programs under the Center for Law Enforcement Ethics. We believe that diversity education, understanding your communities, treating people with dignity and respect, being honest, compassion, de-escalation, that's part of ethics. And so we've developed not only just a regular diversity program, but a program that works on understanding unconscious bias, how it affects you, also understanding communication patterns of different communities. I'm not an advocate that every police officer needs to know every aspect about every community in America, but they do need to know something about the people they police.
Yes.
So if you work in Pierre, South Dakota, it might behoove you to know something about Lakota Sioux society or Cheyenne society. If you work in the hills of Appalachia, it might behoove you to know something about Appalachian people and communication patterns. So that's the way we have structured our program, is that we will target, depending on where we're going, information about the communities at hand. We will also focus on bias. We will also focus on communication and ethical decision-making in our teaching diversity course. I will tell you that course, although it's a popular course, we probably ran that course once a year for probably the last 10 years. Since the Derek Chauvin incident, the George Floyd incident, we've run that course 4 times. I have it scheduled in Topeka, Kansas next week, and we have it in June here.
Well,
so it's getting popular.
With all the media attention on policing right now, do you see the need for continuing education skyrocketing in the coming months?
Oh, definitely. Education is the key. If there's a lot of talk about reforming policing, and I understand that, but there are a number of reforms suggestions that are being made that are already in place. And as you will notice, progressive agencies have bought into that. What we need to do is get more agencies involved in this level of education. There are 18,000 police agencies in America. The Institute, although we are a not-for-profit, in law enforcement educational circles, continuing education circles, we're a bit expensive. So not everyone can tap into it. That's why we're looking for partnerships. That Texas Sergeant Academy, for example, we're in partnership with the Texas Municipal League to be able to take our level of education programs to small, medium-sized and small departments around the state. They supplement the fee for that course, and there is a win-win-win. The department gets our level of education for half the cost. We get our full tuition because we're not for profit, but we have to exist. And TML has done the work, the Texas Municipal League, the intergovernmental risk pool of the Texas Municipal League has done the work to realize that educated police supervisors make less mistakes, which costs them less money.
Yes.
So there's a win-win-win. And so yes, what I would like to see us do is find ways to supplement some of these struggling budgets of smaller agencies and medium-sized agencies to offer these educational programs. Our development director, our vice president for the Center for American International Law, Linda Chanow, one of her efforts is to raise funds so that we can offer scholarships, so that we can go down to West Texas or South Texas and offer a teaching diversity program or an ethics program and say, guys, here's the program, the education you're asking for, de-escalation, conflict resolution, and we have scholarships to pay for it. Because the educated officers are less likely to get involved in use of force incidents that make the news.
Right.
And I know that sounds kind of like PR-ish, but the bottom line is I come from downtown Indianapolis. I was raised in an inner city environment. And from that perspective, from that prism, I see people being safe. I see lives being saved because we want to get our hands wrapped around this issue.
We're almost out of time, but I want to give you a chance to talk about an award that you gave out recently. Tell us about that.
A little bit over a year ago, you all remember the Amber Geiger case.
Yes.
And she unfortunately took the life of both them John. Well, the Institute for the last 17 years has given out an award for ethical courage. Well, that particular year, I believe it was 2018 or 19, I can't remember, 2018, we decided to recognize Brant John for his action in the courtroom when he hugged Amber Geiger. A lot of people don't think about this, but I was talking to a couple of major law enforcement CEOs days before that, and they were completely geared up in Dallas. They were ready. They had the intelligence. They were ready for civil unrest. And when that young man hugged that woman, everything changed. I remember seeing it in my living room, and I would imagine that there were some folks out there that were upset and they were planning on something, but if that young man can hug this woman that took his brother's life, then what right do I have to do this? And so we decided we would recognize Brant for that, and we flew him up from St. Lucia, and they were here for a couple of days, and those 2 days are two of the strongest memories that I have at the Institute.
Wow. Greg, you've been a great guest. We're gonna end by putting up the website, and I'll let you give the domain name.
www, of course, klaw.org. That's CAILAW.org, and you'll be able to find a button for each institute. I see the Law Enforcement Institute is the first one on the left.
That's it. That's it. Gregory Smith, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. And that's it for now. We'll see you next time.